Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. Going to share some thoughts to consider regarding Venus ingressing into the sign of Sagittarius, which just happened, I think it was yesterday. Certainly uplifted my spirits already. So today is the 3rd of November down here in the Southern Hemisphere. And Venus will be in the sign of Scorpio until around about the 27th of November. So this is a beautiful transition for all of us because we have, a lot of intense energies with the cosmic forces in play. We have had and we still are in it, actually, the Pluto squaring Mars aspect, which I wrote a little post about. I don't want to focus too much on that because that's really almost over anyway, but I wonder how any of you experience that vibration. It is very, very, very intense and can be very, very demanding. And if it's working in a conflicting way, then it can be incredibly explosive. On the other hand, it can also be the opportunity to integrate the higher will and the lower will, as I explained in my post. Now, I do want to talk about Venus in Sag because that's a transit that's going to, be in place for a few weeks' time. And it's such a welcomed change of energy for all of us, I think. We've got a lot of Scorpio energy still in play. Mercury just went retrograde in Scorpio, which I've done a whole video on, so I'm not going to unpack that. There's a video there if you want to understand the Mercury in Scorpio going retrograde and what that essentially reflects or brings up for all of us, and it's worth watching, I think. Now, today and tomorrow, Venus will be, so the 3rd and 4th of November, Venus will be forming a trine to Chiron, which is, I think, a really beautiful little window of opportunity where we can, if we are working on matters pertaining to healing something within our own self relative to love, how we love ourselves, and certainly how we love others, or, just we could be in a relationship where things have come up and we need to implement some healing, the path of healing is never easy, but when we have a trine between Chiron, which reflects our deepest fears around rejection, first and foremost, our deepest fear of rejection. That's what Chiron literally reflects. And the healing component of Chiron is contained within that, within the wound or fear of rejection. So Chiron forming a trine to Venus is just a very lovely window, as I said, of an energy that enables us to work further on something perhaps we're already working on. So it's a supportive flow of energy that can really help you on the journey that you're on right now with regards to any healing work pertaining to your own self-love and relationships as well. It's just a nice little aspect happening over the next couple of days. Now, Venus in Sag is, as I said, a welcome change because Venus in Scorpio is not an easy experience, but it is necessary, and it takes us into those deeper dimensions, deeper layers. The experience is one of seeing, whether we like it or not, seeing those deeper sort of limitations or resistances that we may have in terms of how we share ourselves with another or how we step into relationships with other people, even if we've been in one for years. Relationships are always evolving, just as human beings are, and a healthy relationship, as I've said before, absolutely needs to be evolving. Otherwise, it's obviously going to become stagnant, and therefore both individuals become stagnant in their evolution and within the relationship. So a relationship should always be evolving. Now, in Scorpio, we had the journey and the experience of being confronted, if you like, or looking at these, deeper dimensions of matters around trust, matters around betrayal, matters around obsession, compulsion, insecurities, all those things, deep, intense desires, attractions, all the Scorpio stuff. But the focus takes us into the deeper, darker components of ourself as seen through the Scorpio lens. Because Venus in Scorpio, it's not a lightweight energy, okay? It's not, let's just go and have some fun and let's go on an adventure. That's Sag, which we'll get to in a minute. The Venus in Scorpio has taken us through an emotional cleanse, a very deep emotional cleanse. Now, whether we have embarked on the cleansing component and purging component, is up to each individual. If someone is having a really tough time in a relationship, then this Venus in Scorpio certainly not have been an easy experience, but it might have been the catalyst to actually complete, close, or transform what has been sort of stuck previously, if you like, or not looked at in the way that it needed to be seen, because Scorpio has the lens of X-ray vision. So you see perhaps what you don't want to see, but you've got no choice. You've got to see it. It comes up. Things are revealed. Things are exposed. So, yeah, it's a pretty intense experience, and it's not necessarily always pleasant. So we've been through that with Venus and Scorpio the last few weeks, since early October when she first ingressed into Scorpio. And we still have a lot of Scorpio vibration that we are dealing with because the sun's in Scorpio, Mercury is retrograde in Scorpio. However, Venus is the planet of joy and pleasure. Well, actually, Jupiter is the planet of joy and Venus is the planet of pleasure and happiness, right? It's happiness. There is a distinction between happiness and joy, but fundamentally, Venus is what we enjoy in our life. What do you enjoy? Music, dance, running, eating food, traveling, whatever it is you enjoy. The pleasurable delights of life are seen through Venus. So your Venus in your birth chart, whatever sign she's in, whatever house she's in, that's going to reflect back to you really what you actually enjoy in life, period. So transiting Venus activates those pleasurable desires, what we want to enjoy and have fun with. Now, coming out of Scorpio, a good visual metaphor would be to say Venus in Scorpio has been the experience of, she was in the swamp, in the deep internal layers that take us into deep unconscious and subconscious aspects of our being that is not normally consciously activated or looked at on a day-to-day basis. So that the swamp is a swamp, right? It's murky, it's dark, it's heavy, it churns things up, it takes us into the deeper layers of our existence, of our being, as opposed to the everyday normal waking day consciousness and physicality of things. And these deeper dimensions that Venus has taken us into, even though they've been reflected through, the issues have been reflected through, let's say, a relationship that you're in or what we're in or wanting to be in, whatever it is, it's not the matter is not the person necessarily or the relationship necessarily, but the matter is more about where you are in that relationship, who you are in that relationship, what are you showing of yourself in that relationship, how much trust do you have of yourself in the relationship? How much trust do you have in another? How much trust do you have in the relationship? So all these things have been highlighted. You know, a little microscope has gone in and checked everything out, and some have been able to purge, some have experienced deep pain, some have had matters or people from the past reappear in order for things to be completed, closure, and so forth. So it's been a very intense few weeks, okay, just to put it very simply. And now Venus in Sag, she's come out of the swamp and she is in the bright light of day, that beautiful blue, bright sky that makes you feel good. It literally makes your body feel good. Internally, you feel a sense of lightness, optimism, life, excitement, ready to venture out. That's the Sagittarian archetype. So in Sag Venus, she's ready to have some fun now. She's ready. She's come out of the murky swamp, and she's seeking to experience a more expansive level of herself. So we're walking into a journey now where we have seen through the X-ray eyes of Scorpio the areas that we've needed to correct, you could say, heal, transform, purge, release, complete, close off. And now we're ready to step into a new adventure, if you like. Venus and Sag is like a renewed sense of faith in ourselves and in relationships as well. It's what we're seeking to enjoy and also share, because Venus is the sharing function. It's how we share with the people that we love, particularly friends and or lovers. That's where Venus shines. That's where she wants to vibrate. She's a magnetic principle, so her energy is like it's magnetic force that is experienced through friendships, lovers, relationships, and just simply your own general sense of what makes you happy, what you really enjoy. And when we are going through specific junctures in life, specific intense sort of cycles, or we could just be having one area in life that's really quite challenging at the moment, that's very confronting, that feels hopeless, that feels impossible, whatever the case may be. Well, this transition of Venus going into Sag, there'll be an overall sense of upliftment within all of us. And we really do need that because we've had a heavy dose of Scorpio. So if you're in a relationship, this is a beautiful time for the relationship to expand, and experience new levels, and the ability to see the relationship from a more optimistic level, from a more expansive view, and where it's going, sort of moving into the future, if you like. So all matters to do with, travel, philosophy, other cultures, experiencing, meeting new people from other cultures, different sort of nationalities, just those various different types of orientations to life that are outside of the little world that you live in. That's the desire of Venus and Sag. It's a time where we want to experience a lot of freedom. It's the free spirit energy coming through. So if you're in a relationship that's very maybe defined by you feeling very closed in or limited or blocked, or the relationship is very limiting or suffocating in some kind of way, well, this Venus in Sag, she's going to sort of break you free of that, because Venus in Sag will not be tied down to anything. She needs to be free and explore. Now, in my opinion, when it comes to love and relationships, the minute we try to change somebody, which we can't in truth, stop somebody from doing something or limit them, try to control them and so forth, that's not love. That's a possession. That's a possessiveness. And that is born from a space of insecurity, because if you feel a sense of security within your own self. You won't feel the need to keep someone else limited or dependent on you, because when you do that, that is just a place of insecurity that's coming from within your own self. So when it comes to the Sag energy, it is truly the archetype of the free spirit and freedom. And so it's really about being able to open yourself up to that and step into that way of seeing and feeling and experiencing how you share yourself and how you view your relationship as well. Because the greatest sense of freedom you can feel within your own self, the more free the relationship will feel as well. You know, the more you try to box someone in or hold them in a particular way that you want them and need them to be, the more stagnant the relationship becomes, the more suffocated the other person feels. So the ultimate um, giving and sharing of love is to truly allow somebody to be who they are, whoever that may be, and also allowing yourself to be who you are. And remember, we're always becoming because we are always evolving. So this is a great energy to enable us to step into that space of being able to let go, step into a place of optimism, a renewed sense of faith and optimism of where life is going with this relationship, for instance, or even just your own general um, matters of what it is you enjoy. You know, Venus is always going to reflect what you enjoy, as I said earlier. So if you're not in a relationship, this Venus in Sag will just create a beautiful sense of renewal and optimism in the things that connect to Sag. And wherever Venus is placed in your natal chart, it's going to draw from that area of life. If it's in the seventh house, obviously it's going to be specifically connecting to relationships. You know, if it's in the second house, it will have to do with your own finances, day-to-day in and out money dealings, and just your own values and things. If it's in the third house, you might just start a little short course, something that you really have wanted to do for ages, and it's pleasurable, it's enjoyable, it's not draining, it's not demanding, it's just something that you will enjoy. If she's transiting your 10th house, then she's going to bring a greater sense of freedom and enjoyment in your life path, career path, vocation, employment, you know, whatever. I mean, they're just basic key words, but they're important because they reflect, you know, the different dimensions of the chart in terms of the houses. So it's always important to pay attention to where this transit will be, because she will be there for a few weeks. And ultimately, it's coming out of the heavy the heavy swamp of feelings of things that we've had to work through and we've had to release, purge, and now we can step into confidence, optimism, joy, happiness, a lighter sense. You know, there'll be a layer that will be lifted and reduced from the shoulders. Venus, she's a very, very personal planet, and she's a feminine vibration. However, she speaks through both the feminine and the masculine, obviously, as in men and women, of course. And she will always reflect where you experience some happiness, pleasure, and joy. Very simple. And just what you're seeking to share in a shared experience with another. So the shared experience with the Sag archetype is going to reflect that need for freedom. It's the free spirit energy. So don't try and hold your partner back. and you won't have, equally so, you can't have your partner trying to hold you back either. It's you know, when you think about even the Scorpio house, right? It's like the swamp, the deep, deep, deep waters, right? Where things are happening in with such depth and such intensity, and it can be exhausting when you go through that process. And then when you come out of the 8th house into the ninth house or Sagittarius is the where you were standing, where you saw only perhaps maybe just one way of looking at something. It was deep, it was intense, it had deep roots and layers to it, and you had to see it. But now with Sagittarius, you start to actually visualize things in a much more expansive way. So the work that you've been doing with Venus and Scorpio, it's going to feel like a bit of a reward now, because you're not going to feel stuck, you know? It's pretty busy for a Sunday around here. Sunday's usually very quiet. So matters of truth, the archetype that connects to truth is Sagittarius and Pisces as well. So it could be said then that what has been opened up and understood from greater depths within your being while Venus has been in Scorpio, in terms of self-love, right? Self-love and how you love others as well. The journey into Venus into Sagittarius is the seeking of freedom, but it's also the seeking of truth, you know, seeing the truth in its ultimate form. So greater truths can be revealed, but it's a lighter experience. It's not dark and intense and dragging you back into, you know, intense sort of space and feeling. We have to go through that. That's why Venus, you know, travels through Scorpio, and when she gets into Sag, she's ready to just like kind of spread her wings and just, you know, fly out there and check things out. Check out what else is around, you know, what else can I assimilate and integrate into what I enjoy about my life, you know, what makes me happy. Giving and sharing with another is usually an experience that brings us happiness as well, or at least it should. If it's true giving and true sharing, it should bring us a sense of joy as well. So this truth component is very important when Venus goes into Sag, because you'll be able to see the bigger picture of where you are heading, where you've sort of been, and where you are heading. But just be a little bit careful on the level of, because Sagittarius is so optimistic and just you could say, sees the best in everything, really. It just wants to see it doesn't look at the flaws. It wants things to be, well, Venus needs fairness and justice. But in Sagittarius, she is very tolerant of the little flaws, you know, that we all have. And she's prepared to overlook that as long as there is truth there, and truth is shared and experienced and acknowledged. You know, it's very, very important. So, but anyway, overall, fundamentally, Venus and Sag is going to uplift our spirits, renew our attitude about love, if you like, and just renew our spirit from the level of feeling a greater sense of joy in terms of, and happiness in terms of moving forward with what gives us pleasure in life. Pure and simple pleasure. What gives you pleasure? That's seen through Venus. Now, as I said, Mercury is still retrograde in Scorpio, Sun's in Scorpio, still dealing with some Scorpionic components. And moving forward, which I'll do a separate video for this, we're going to experience transiting Chiron, squaring the transiting moon's nodes, and that's going to be an interesting journey moving forward. And again, it is going to bring up. Well, actually, I won't talk about it now because it's not active yet. It's probably starting though, because it's getting very close. But I'll do a separate video on that. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because we want to really tune into the vibration of Venus and Sag and just take advantage of the little pleasures in life that will actually be in one way they'll be quite big with Venus and Sag, because everything in Sag is big. And sometimes things can get blown out of proportion though. So careful, some caution to not over exaggerate, the perception that you might have on a personal relationship or things like that. Try and, keep yourself grounded at the same time, but definitely don't hold back from allowing yourself to feel, a more optimistic view on things, because that's where we're going. That's where Venus is taking us, to have that level of faith and confidence in ourselves and in our relationships and in the things that we enjoy, so that we can have that experience. We need to have those experiences. We can't just always be, every single day just focusing on serious, hardcore, intense matters. We need to balance things out, and that's what Venus brings our attention to as well. Brings our attention to the area of balance. We need to have the balance of everything in life. That's why we have day and night. That's why we have, hot and cold weather, and so on and so forth. We have the contrast, the experience of duality. So if we have been overly identified with the Venus and Scorpio experience from the level of just identifying very, very strongly with what we've felt incredibly intense about, we're now stepping into a space where we can free ourselves up from that. But we've got to let it go, and we've got to continue moving forward. And we're very fortunate with Venus in Sag, because it's an immediate uplifting of your spirit. How beautiful is that? We all need that, I think, right now, especially. So just a few things to consider there. Naturally, have a look at where Venus is transiting in your birth chart relative to your birth chart. But overall, looking at a very lighter experience of having some fun and exploring new adventures, new territory, new ground. And during Venus's transit through Sag, people travel, explore other cultures. You could meet a person from a different cultural background, and those experiences expand your field of consciousness, because we can get very we can become very closed in our way of thinking and seeing what life is and what it means, and our perception of how some other culture or country lives, or thinks, or what they value, and so on and so forth. We have a general sort of sense and view, and it's not until we have a very personal experience, of another land, culture, country, nationality, philosophical orientation, etc., where we can experience our own personal experience through that, in order to be able to frame our own perception on that, right? It'll be our own subjective perception, but it's going to come through a real experience. So there's so much richness for the soul when it comes to venturing out and expanding beyond the parameters of what we think is normal or what we think we should or should not be doing. So that's what Sag does. It gives us that optimism and that faith and confidence to step outside of those walls, which is Saturn, and give us the richness of seeing things in a much broader view, plain and simple, which adds richness to the experience of your soul. And when you meet somebody from another culture or another country and you have a personal experience with them, even if it's just on a friendship level, that experience adds a richness to your soul's evolution, because there's not one way of living, there's not one way of seeing, there's not one way of thinking, there's not one way of believing. And all the interactions we have and what we open ourselves to adds richness to our evolution and gives us the opportunity to decide whether we want to explore that further. And it might be that we thought that culture or that particular person who has that, you know, background of nationality or whatever, we might have a particular perception on a particular group of people. And then when we meet somebody from that place, our whole perception changes because we have a personal experience and we see things in a, you know, much more expansive way. So this is what Sag takes us into. It's really lovely, you know. It's just positive. It's positive and it's optimistic and it's enjoyable. So make the most of it. And I'll see you guys very, very soon with something else. Probably the Chiron squaring the nose. I think that's going to be a big one. So have fun, guys, and sending you much love and blessings. Leave any comments and questions below, and I'll be happy to answer them or, yeah, just engage with you. Bye for now. Thanks.